Okay, so remember that they're changing my voice. First of all, let's talk about the fact that they did things in a way that caused me to wet some papers of mine, and among those papers were several stacks of the chapters in the book of Jeremiah. I must have like 200 papers or something, and just a fraction of them were in that stack. And one of them was Jeremiah. It didn't hit me till later, until the government pointed it out, people who work for the government, that they had caused this paper to be wet, and that connects to the gentleman who was named Jeremiah Aguilera, which is like the word Aguileri, which is the culture center for Horus in southeast Nigeria, where the followers of Horus connect to. Okay, the main center, right? So in Egypt, there was Nekhen in the Aswan Governorate, and it's not as significant as the center in Biafra, Biafra, southeast Nigeria, that is called Aguileri of the Igbo tribe. Again, I'm not from the cult of the flesh, but they are, so they point to that and so on and so forth. Okay. So when we look at this thing and we try to understand the characters in the story, the Morgan Hill story, we try to understand how these gentlemen who were killed in unincorporated Watsonville, which is on the other side of the Santa Cruz Mountains of unincorporated Morgan Hill, where I live. So in incorporated Morgan Hill, you're significantly away from the mountains, right? The hills. Where in unincorporated Morgan Hill, if you're on the west side of town, you're touching the hills. And over the hills, which includes, Hecker Pass, if you drive toward Gilroy, you go to Santa Cruz, what have you, and you go up the hill and past Mount Madonna Inn, where what used to be Mount Madonna Inn, and my mother's name's Donna. You go down the hill, okay, towards Santa Cruz, right? You go through unincorporated Watsonville. And from what I gather, they're talking about that part of unincorporated Watsonville. And even if not, it still connects to unincorporated, where these two cousins were killed. And of course, cuz is a Crip word. Cuz and cousin. So we got to understand the characteristics. What's the difference between Lex Luthor beating up the punching bag? Okay. The righteous son of God who's mad about all the rapes and all the horrible stuff going on in the world, beating up the punching bag? An angry biker or something who wants to rape people? You're not saying that most bikers do, but just throwing something out there, help you picture it. Beating up the punching bag. Okay. Some pretty boy who just upholds social norms, having a bad day, mad because while he's in the culture of the devil, accepting their social norms of this world, he found his life in the world, something happened that upset him. Those are different spirits beating up the punching bag. And the spirit of justice, which I'm in and that I live every moment, if I was dating a female, every touch, every breath, every word to her, every caress, every time we make love would be in that spirit. Where the other guys, right, spirit and spear it, strike it, right, sword and striking and spear and striking and stabbing and penetrating intelligence. Okay. Being sharp, piercing intelligence. There's a difference. And that is key in this story. And as I looked at the first page in Jeremiah that I found was Jeremiah 22, and it talks about how the wicked have built their cultures, their nations, their palaces, their families from dishonest gain and oppressing the poor instead of doing what's just and right, and how Jehoiakim, a son of Josiah, was cast out for not being righteous. Because the world has rejected my leadership, okay, and they're poisoning of me past a certain point some years back. Some years back was the final point when it was clear that they should not reproduce. It became clear between the tech, breeding, cheating, generational ill-gotten gains, the brain hacking, the exact trajectory of society, what's going on in the world, where we were, where we are, all the possibilities for where humanity could possibly go. It became pure evil to reproduce. So as I wet the paper, right, wetting somebody, right, before I wet the paper, which was symbolic of them wetting Jeremiah. Now, did I order that to occur? No. Pay attention. I do not approve of them killing those two gentlemen in Watsonville. It was horrible. It was sick. Okay? And I said before, when I made the Morgan Hill story about the clash with the Norteños, this was during that time. I brought up I live in unincorporated Morgan Hill in the Santa Cruz Mountains, right? And that's the other side of it. I said, I don't want these people to to be killed on my behalf. I don't want any, the story isn't about raising resentment for Northerners, right? The story was about a story with a moral, and first and foremost, part of that moral, part of the story is me telling my life story. So where was Christ during those years, 16 to 19? For the most part, I was in Morgan Hill and San Jose, and that was the Morgan Hill part of it. And the San Jose part of it isn't as event-filled as the Morgan Hill part of it. I didn't clash as much. There's one time I was playing basketball and choked somebody, and it's not that important. Okay, in San Jose on the west side, okay, there's some things that went down there. There's some things that happened there. But it was more event-filled in Morgan Hill. And it had more to do with making decisions as a man, as a warrior. Okay, what do I do? Okay, how far do I take it? And explaining that. And how, you could be friends with people and you have your disagreements, right? And how that it then draws a wedge and then we never hang out again. Okay, and that's sad. Those are people from my community, from my, my greater community in Morgan Hill. It's a small town. I lived in unincorporated Morgan Hill, and I live there still. And it's sad. And Sereno's also, from the greater Santa Clara County, part of my community, and how we should have been able to sit down and hash these things out and create a truce and so on and so forth. And how certain forces from the governing class, again, I'm not racist, but they're run by white Jews and LGBT people. That's the facts. That they don't want that to occur. And they went the distance using technology, fumes, poisons, you name it. Using financial sabotage, creating stress and background stressors to cause these culture clashes and these incidents that occurred that could have escalated to bloodshed. To bloodshed to the point of death. And on the other side of the mountain, after I'm done telling the story, that occurs in a way that is abnormal. It is not normal for two people in the same family to get killed in a gang-related incident. It is not that unheard of, but it's fairly rare. Usually it's one person gets killed. If it's two people, they're not in the same family. This kind of stuff. And I had brought up the blood of associate. I call him the affiliate, but I meant associate. His cousins were bloods. Okay, I used the word cousins. Okay, and it was a big part of the story. And I brought up unincorporated Morgan Hill and how that makes me different from the people in incorporated Morgan Hill on top of the other differences, and that's a big part of the story. And this guy's named Jeremiah, when he shoots somebody, one way to describe it is he got wet. He got smoked, and recently there was a controlled burn on Billy, and there was a bunch of smoke in the air. So there was smoke, and the Jeremiah papers was made wet. Okay, and these people point out to me that yes, that's what they're pointing to, and it also has implications on sex. Okay, it is fucking despicable that they're running the psyop on me, the Son of God, and the people all over the world are being killed for reasons that are connected to this. That their spirit in which they do in this is the same spirit in which kids get raped. They make a quote-unquote killing in business. People get drugged. Wives get beat. Adults get raped. People are abused in various forms. Children are starving to death. People are starving. It's the same damn spirit. That Zeus spirit. That center spirit of Western culture. That center spirit of the global Jewish culture. It's a central spirit that dominates these groups and through them dominates the world. Anyone who's outside the divine order that is causing these things to occur. There's mild levels of it in the average poor person, and there's intense levels of it in the average rich, very active in the New World Order type of person. Now in this video I did a lot better job of articulating myself. It's simple. I'm being fumed less right now than I was in the other videos in the chronological order playlist, where I'm going to emphasize in the first videos the Morgan Hill 16 through 19, the Santa Cruz experiences. Okay, I've already done that. It should be on the playlist already. And you'll see there's a lot of incidents with Norteños and Serenos because that's the demographics of this area. Santa Clara County is like, from my experience, it seems less than 2%, but they say it's 2% in Morgan Hill black and 2% in San Jose black. And Oakland's, like 45 minutes away. And Berkeley has a lot of black people, San Francisco, but not so much San Jose or Morgan Hill. And same with Santa Cruz, not so many black people. Okay, the black people who I was detained with in Santa Cruz County jail were from, before I got this stuff removed from my record, were from Stockton, from Seaside. There were Bloods and Crips from various locations. And other black people who were locked up with them. But Seaside was a big one. There's one gentleman was from LA, and he was like the rep for the black people, big, tall, strong black guy. And we, in that particular cell block, okay, there was just maybe one or two more Serranos in that cell block than black people, right? And we could have easily held it down in a riot, all day long. But and that's part of the system, that same kind of mentality that divides black people in jail that I felt. That same social barrier is there in the streets right now. Sometimes some of these gentlemen, people are friends with it. Little Sodi, rest in peace. Before he died, he said he was his best friend, right? And he was probably just putting extras on it for the sake of peace, was from a Serrano gang named Florencia. And I've come across one of those gentlemen on the internet before, and at first we were arguing with each other. Then we kind of became kind of friends on the internet, or whatever you would call that. And we, I said, hey, we should create peace. And not long after that, Florencia and the East Coast Crip Gang, who I also commented on their videos, right? Sibo the rapper, his cousin, little Ezel Ford, was killed by police, and I commented on that and made a little song. It sucked, but I tried, and I was, under mind control, what have you, brain hacking, whatever, covertly drugged. So those guys ended up making peace, and it's hard to say why the government allows for this, because they could easily have interfered in it. They have all kinds of tricks. For whatever reason, they allow for stuff like that. I think it's for the purpose of confusion, because Set is a deity of confusion, and if you do all evil all the time, you're more clear on who your enemy is and what he's doing. But if he makes it seem like he's kind of helping you out or something, it confuses it.